You know, it's interesting that in Genesis chapter 3, verse 1, you have to turn there, and it says, you know, this is the beginning of the fall. And you see that beginning part of that scripture says, and now the serpent. That's the way that our English version of the translates that word. And now the serpent was the most crafty of all God's creatures. And then it goes into the story. And you know, it's funny because when you watch, like, there's this old movie that's like the book of Genesis, and you can watch and you see this serpent guy show up, and he looks like a snake, and he's talking to Eve and the whole story. You know, honestly, that scripture, and that word there, serpent, is not, it doesn't mean snake, it means shining one who hisses, one who has scales. And the amazing thing is that it couldn't have looked like a snake, because why? Well, one part of the judgment is that, you know, he would be, you know, he'd slither on the ground. So he had to look different. A lot of people believe that this, you know, speaking of the devil, obviously, that the way he looked like a dragon. You know, he looked like a magnificent dragon, and he appeared before Eve as this magnificent shining one, this creature. And he came and he talked to Eve, and he turns to Eve and says, you know, well, you know, why aren't you eating this fruit here? You know, he had something about him that shined. It was a glory. Because why? Because he was the anointed cherub. Why didn't Eve think it was odd that this dragon walked up to her and started talking to her? Probably because it was common, because he was sent there to guard them. Why was Eve so readily able to listen to him and to accept what he's saying? Because Eve knew that he was sent there to guard them. But what was he really trying to do? You see, what had happened to the devil? Well, look at this in Ezekiel. It says that unrighteousness was found in him. Now, it says, by the abundance of your trade, you were internally filled with violence, and you have sinned. Verse 16 of Ezekiel 28. You know, and it's funny, one of the things I want to point out is the idea of a snake. The animal that we call a snake, actually, that comes from mythology. You know, that comes from Jewish mythology, the idea of the devil being like that. It doesn't mean it was a literal snake in the garden saying that. It was a creature. It was actually the devil who appeared as the shining creature to Eve. As a dragon. As something, you know, magnificent, as powerful. As a guardian of creation. You know, and it's interesting that his whole plan, you know, when you see this, it says that the abundance of his trade. You know, it's interesting what that means. It means the prosperity of his influence, or the prosperity of his power. That he started to realize how much power he had. You know, that these humans would listen to him. That these humans that God created, this creation of God, that he knew that this was Adam and Eve, they were God's, I mean, they were God's crown and jewel. These were God's love. These were God's heart. And he wanted that. He wanted that worship. He wanted that glory. He wanted something above what he had as just being a guardian over these creatures. These creatures that in his mind, he was even more powerful than. In his mind, he knew they could be manipulated. In his mind, he knew he was better than these things. So what did he do? When he realized his power, when he realized he had it, he wanted to take that authority that God gave to man and take it for himself. The devil wanted to strip the authority that man had over the world. He wanted a kingdom. He became very powerful in his influence. You know, and it's interesting that basically by taking the authority from man, when man chose to eat that fruit, when they chose to bow their knee to the devil, when they chose to listen to his evil words that were against God, he became the rebellious prince of the world, the rebel prince. And Jesus refers to him as the prince of the world. You know, Jesus referred to him as that. Why? Because he took that authority that belonged to King Adam and Eve and stripped them of that authority and became the prince of the world. You guys follow me? I know I'm going to get in some crazy deep stuff here, but I like it, so if you guys don't enjoy it, at least I will. Okay, the devil, fact number one, the devil is not God's servant. Now this is a total misunderstanding. Let me tell you why. First of all, most people that say that, they quote the book of Job. Now, the interesting thing is, you know what the name of the devil is in the book of Job? It's Ha-Satan, or where we get the word Satan. You know what that word means? It means rebellious. It means the rebellious one. So, why would they call Satan the rebellious one if he was, you know, listening to God? He wouldn't be the rebellious one. You know, basically, when you read the book of Job, I'm not going to get on a big mess in the book of Job, but basically, you know, God is not using the devil to whoop Job. That is a total misunderstanding. The devil was the prince of the world. He had the power and authority to do what he wanted. But the thing is that when a man listened to God, and when a man worshiped God, God was able to protect him. Because of that covenant. You notice something. I want to point something out to you that's amazing. What was the first thing that God did in the garden after Adam and Eve had sinned and followed the devil? Well, the first thing he did is he spoke. He spoke a word. What did he say? You might bruise, the seed of the woman's going to come. He's going to crush your head. Even though you might bruise his feet, he's going to crush your head. He spoke a word. And then what was the next thing he did? God killed an animal and clothed Adam and Eve. He did something. He did something about it. He took care of that sin and he covered them. He covered them. You know, and it's amazing because you see that God steps into that situation and gives man the capability of surviving in a world that's now going to be destroyed by the devil. And you see all through the Bible where the devil just is destroying the world as much as he can, doing all this stuff, driving people to the point, and God is in the middle. But the only way, see, this is the thing I want you to understand. God made this world for man, right? Adam and Eve. God gave authority of the world to man. Remember, he said, go for it, be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth. So how was God going to get back into this world? Through man. So every single thing that he did from that day forward was moving back into getting back into the world. You know, with the covenant that he made with Abraham. You know, with the covenants he made with David. With all these different things, he was working towards this, And he was constantly providing people a way to be sheltered from the evil of the enemy. And even in that scripture you read in Job, where Job says, well, I can't touch you, I can't touch Job because you got a hedge around him. I think it's kind of interesting because God's like, look, the bottom line of it is that Job, it says that in chapter 3, it says Job constantly feared. He said, the things I feared have come upon me. Well, fear opens the door for the devil to come in and do what he wants. But you notice the one thing the devil could not do, and even God said it, he goes, you can't touch his life. The devil cannot kill you. No matter what. I mean, he's never had the authority to kill. The devil can never create, and he can never take life. All he can do is manipulate it. All he can do is pervert it. He can put you in situations to where you'll die. Yeah, he'll get you to start drinking a lot. Next thing you know, you're like, oh, I got to drive home, and then you're driving, and next thing he deceived you. He can get you doing different things to get you outside of God's will, God's plan, God's purpose, getting you outside of that hedge, getting you outside of that protection, and get you out there where something could happen to you. But the devil cannot kill you. He does not have that power. Okay. He was a rebellious deceiver, an accuser. I think I was talking about this earlier. It was interesting. I was reading about some things about the Church of Satan, right? The Church of Satan is, one of the funniest things I think that most people don't know is the Church of Satan doesn't worship Satan. They really don't. I mean, they believe there's no God or Satan. They're atheists. They believe that basically you should live out your life as selfishly as possible. Any sort of desire and whatever you want, you just do it. Who cares about who you hurt? And that's why they use the word Satan, is because the word Satan means rebel, rebellious. And I think one of the ironies of it is they have the 9 deadly sins of Satanism, right? And their number one sin is stupidity. I thought it was kind of funny because most of the stuff they believe is stupid, but that's their number one sin. But anyways,